Are you ready?
Woo! That was a strange howl I made for you all. Everyone, welcome to day 2 afternoon lightning talks. How's everyone's day 2 been so far? Wow, I can tell you've had a really good day today.
Yes, I have so much fun. I went to the mental sprint, I juggled a little bit, and then I went to the PSF lunch.
Yeah,
and
the members' lunch. That was
Very
great.
good, very
Some
good.
really exciting things the Python Software Foundation is up to. If you have not yet registered as a member, you can register as a basic member, which is free. We also have a lot of other members options, and you can find any board of director member, any staff member, former people. I'm happy to answer those questions. We'll be happy to talk to you more about the PSF. Also, as a reminder, there are still open spaces going on. So can you tell us about an interesting open space we heard about earlier that's going to happen tomorrow?
Yes, so did you submit the lightning talk and didn't get selected? Do you feel disappointed that you have these slides that you have prepared and you didn't get the chance to show? Don't worry, because tomorrow there's an open space that you can submit your, I guess you don't have to submit, you just show your lightning
off.
talk. So what is that section called again?
Yeah, it's called Lightning Talks They Didn't Want You to Hear. So I don't know if that's bitter or fun. We're not going to take it as too bitter. I think it's all in good fun. That's at noon tomorrow in room 250 AB. By the way, convention halls have the weirdest numbering system, so I don't know. 250 AB, enjoy that. And let's see, any other announcements that we would like to share for people about Lightning Talks, for example, tomorrow?
Yes, so tomorrow we have a very special lightning talk because there will be people who are around the world. They have communities and they have events that want to tell us about. So if you organize any, Python conference locally or Python events locally or community events locally, then, it's your last chance. Send Lorena a slide or a picture, I guess. Then,
Yes.
then you can show up tomorrow to give a very, very short promotion.
Yes. So that is, you can use my email, lorena@python.org. It's also floating around on the Python Discord, on Twitter. I don't know, I spammed a lot of places with that info. So that pretty much does it. So let's go ahead and get kicked off with our first lightning talk. And speaking of amazing events around the world, we're going to be hearing about some really exciting things happening over with PyCon Korea. Let's take it away.
Hi, I want to talk about my 10 years of PyCon Korea. Why 10 years? Yeah, it's because I bought the domain 10 years ago. Yeah, but it's not. It's not 10 years. It's actually 9 years of PyCon Korea. Yeah, I'm Gwanam from South Korea. In the beginning, there were Pythons. I started with Python since 2000 with 1.6. It was time of the open source and the Linux. Many people teach each others. So I learned from some procs. Python supported my bills and housing. So I decided to give back to the people about what I learned, that's how I started 2012. After that, I started. So I got some procs to make Python visible to the procs of Korea. Made Facebook group, Python Korea, for Korean users. Many procs joined. I bought the domain at that time and started PyCon. But, after that, I got failure. Too many schedules and too many words, do something L, do something Y. And actually, at that time, I didn't get a job. There's many consulting out of time. So I failed to launch PyCon at the time. And the luck begins. I got the job. I got the job because that job I can success PyCon. It's a Japan-based company, so I went to Japan for the company trip sometimes. It happens because working on Japan-based company. But again, too much work, too much trouble. I have no time to work on PyCon Korea. And I visited PyCon Japan. Actually APAC. That's me. There were PyCon APAC sessions, so I joined and talked about the PIP health. There was 3 reasons: PyCon JP, Singapore, Taiwan. They have want to help me. So I got contact, and they encouraged me. After that, good luck again. I got the 4 new folks to run the PyCon Korea. What should I do? I need to get some experience about PyCon. PyCon US. I should go. Well, I should run. But, I got second son. Schedule canceled. It's long flight. And my family needed. Okay, let's go Taiwan. Short flight, short schedule, I can go at weekend. That was PyCon AFAC. But tickets sold out. Wait, there is group check-in for 3 persons? Okay, I can fly. So I have 2 free tickets. What should I do? Invite 2 people from the Press Korea, Pal Ladies, and Young Korea Organizers join. If I didn't invite them, it didn't work. Both folks went to Taiwan. I got an advice from Taiwan. Start from small core teams. And at PyCon Effect panel discussion, like this, I said, we'll have PyCon Korea at the end of August. Actually, I didn't ask folks about it. I just did it. Why August? I have second study September. I made an announcement by myself. If I don't do that, I get some blame. Actually, at this time, I think they don't blame me. But at that time, the announcement works for me. Timely, 2 people resigned their day job. I don't know why. And devote to the PyCon Korea. We got the venues and website, not a big venue, but started as small. Okay, we need keynote speaker. Ask some PMS people about keynote, like a video or some. They rejected because of schedule, too tight schedule, and schedule and math. I got advice again, start small. It means we can go without keynote. Okay, open the registration, sold 400 tickets in 1 day, all sold out. But in these days, out of time. So anyway, many people talked, I want ticket, look again. Chang Heshik, the PS fellow and the committee of Python, give me a phone call. Can I get a ticket? Yes, you can do the keynote. We are keynote speakers. It's kind of law. If I do more details, it can happen. And 9 years of PyCon Korea, we got something like this. Open space, childcare, programs. And this, we have 1,000, about 2,000 people. Like this. And we did it. Also, you can do it. That's important. For countries have PyCon, ask me. Also, we have one space. Need people, more visitors, speakers to PyCon epic regions. We more connects. Like this schedule, you can ask me. And thanks for the PS with your money and help. Epic with members of our class. And after 10 years, this became this. They start to learn Python. Thank you.
It's a very, very touching lightning talk. Thank you so much. And we have actually all the lightning talk are very different in topic. And the next one actually is about typing. So another talk, and we have our speaker here ready. So thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Cass Storr, and I'm with Unified, which is a social network that supports activists. And I'm going to talk to you about workflows with typing. So what is a workflow orchestration engine? Actually, I should say this talk was going to be 10 tips for using Temporal to orchestrate your workflow. But I have to be totally honest with you. I don't think I have 10 tips to offer. So this is like less than or equal to 10 tips. So what is a workflow orchestration engine? Most of you are probably familiar with it. It's anything that runs batch jobs, NL pipelines, user-triggered async events, that kind of thing. We've used a lot of them, Airflow. We've used cron jobs on a scheduler, Lambda functions. They all have their headaches. I was here last year talking to a bunch of people about it. People had solutions and workarounds, but they had workarounds, but not really solutions, right? So we came across something called Temporal, one of my colleagues did. And it's really made running workflows a lot easier, primarily because we get to type the inputs and the outputs. So I'm not going to go into temporal too much. They have a booth. Go talk to them. This is what it looks like. There's a server, a bunch of workers, and a web UI. You can scale the workers like you would any container on your deployment. This is the web UI, right? You can see I have 2 workflows here, one that completed, one that failed. When you go into it, you can see a little more detail, and including the payloads. So let's look at some code. This is a basic sample workflow. I'm not going to go into detail, but one thing you notice here, there's a model. And that model uses object IDs, which you'll note are not JSON serializable. We define an activity, it prints those IDs, and a workflow that runs them. At the bottom of this workflow, we also define the activities. And we've configured it so we can just define all of our workflows with YAML files, which is really makes deployment so easy. And then we run a little code to deploy them to the worker. So typing, we use Pydantic. I bet a lot of you do. Within Pydantic, we've customized it to do JSON serialization of our object IDs. So all we had to do was write a data converter for Pydantic, and we used that as our data converter, and now we're just passing around Pydantic models between tasks. Also, it's pretty Pythonic. You can use normal Python code. So one of the things with workflows is you want to see when they fail, and you don't want to have to write that code over and over and over again for every workflow. So I just wrote a base workflow class. It has 3 methods. It logs when a workflow starts, when it completes, and it raises a critical error when it fails. And then you can see here, to run that, it's pretty easy. I just have my workflow as per usual, and right here you see if the failure error is caught, then I just run this method, and it logs it, and then I get a Slack alert. So that's typing with workflows using temporal. We found it really easy. We can use Pydantic, and it makes life so much easier to debug and test our workflows. If you have questions, let me know. I want to thank my team at Unified, Jack Lecka and Brian Vanderhoof, who stood this up, the community at Temporal, and obviously PyCon for letting us share our little learnings along the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Next, we have Paul, who, in talking with them about being an employee at Indeed, who is one of our sponsors, I had a really fun moment when I was like, yes, Indeed, I will make sure to reference that. My own silly humor. But anyways, let's pass it over to Paul to take it away.
Okay, great, thank you. So last year or so, I was involved with going through sort of a survey of significant Python changes, code changes by version as part of some upgrade projects and as part of some book writing. So I'll go through one of the things that we found as part of this survey was this change in the stir function. So common function that we use a lot, lstrip and rstrip for typically for removing white space, but if used, it can actually maybe remove a little more than you would want. So if we look at this line of code, who knows what this is going to print? Yes? L.com, yes. You would think that it's going to return shell.com, but this is not the string to remove, but this is the list of characters that lstrip is going to remove. And all of these characters are in that set. In version 3.9, we got the new features, remove prefix, remove suffix, and so this would be more properly written this way. So what we found when talking to our different network of people using Python, companies were looking at their code bases, and they found that they were using lstrip and rstrip perhaps in some it uncovered some latent bugs in their code. And so this is something that you might want to do as a right, and when you head home, look at the L strip and R strip that you have. Calls that take the no argument form, not a problem, but it's those that take a quoted string of some sort. You might want to review and make sure that it's doing what you really want. So this was actually done as part of the work on the latest edition of Python in a nutshell. It covers latest versions 3.7 up through 3.11. And so as part of that work, I was talking with the other authors and really wanted to have a good catalog by version of what were the different changes in there, so people could plan their Python upgrades and so forth. And also we added an appendix with detailed information. So this is one page from the appendix, and you can see that by version we have the different changes, whether they're additions, removals, whether it's a breaking change or not. And here is the remove, for 3.9, remove prefix and remove suffix. So it turns out that even if you don't buy the book, this information is available at a website that we have open so that you can just go to, and this is the QR code for that website, if you care to record that. And then I'm going to try the live demo. So here, if I put in stir, what are all the changes related to the stir class? And then we can see, okay, well, there's is ASCII was added in 3.7. There's remove prefix. Oh, why not? Windows B? All right, that's not what I wanted. Here we go. Yes, so, okay, thank you. So I'll go back, and I wasted some of my precious time, too. Okay, so if I put in stir, now I can see these are the results that we get. And for those of you doing the challenge, you have some points now. There's some 3.11 features. You can put in other things. You can put in a version as well, so I could put in 3.11, and those are all the changes that were new. So this is an open website for you to do release planning or upgrade planning for your own install base. And that's my talk.
Thank you. And yeah, it's very scary when you are giving a lightning talk and you're having technical difficulties. So I guess if you kind of, unfortunately running out of time, you can give your talk again tomorrow at the open space. And our next speaker, David, is going to, so his talk is definitely not written by ChatGPT, so enjoy.
Yeah, sorry, my talk doesn't have any ChatGPT. Instead, I'm going to tell you about my experience submitting Crozetta to PyOpenSci. I'm David Nicholson. You can find me at all those places. Who am I? I'm a high school dropout. I'm a failed rock star. Later, I got a PhD in neuroscience, studying songbirds. I'll tell you about that later. Not think of myself as a research software engineer. I'm active in US RSE. And I also happen to be the current editor-in-chief of PyOpenSci. So long story short, I would say I have a very non-traditional background. So from personal experience, I really know why we need to work on inclusivity in science and software. And that's a big part of the PyOpenSci mission, which is why I'm really proud to be part of the organization. I'm also somebody who just submitted a package there. I guess you could call that dog fooding, but that word is gross, so I'm not going to use it. So Crozetta is a Python tool to work with any format for annotating animal vocalizations and bioacoustics data. So basically there's two ways you can annotate animal sounds. You can make a bunch of lines, or you can make a bunch of rectangles. Sometimes you make a bunch of dots. There's like 1,000 different tools for doing this, and it wasn't easy to work with all their annotation formats in Python, and not easy to share that in like a simple flat file format like a CSV or JSON. And so this is part of a research software community for people that study animal communication. So basically like how an actually intelligent being would actually communicate instead of like a stochastic parrot that just randomly regurgitates the internet. So there is actually a ChatGPT reference in my talk. So thank you. You can laugh at that joke or cry. So when you submit to BiopenSci, it will go through me or a board of editors-in-chief that replaces me, but I instead had to go to the executive director, Leah Wasser. If you want to find out everything about PyOpenSci, you should watch her Maintainer Summit talk, you should read our blog post, check out our guides. I went to her and I said, hey, if I was the editor for my own submission, would that be a conflict of interest? And she said, yes, you should not do that. So she found an editor, Chiara Marmo, who's way too smart for me to fit into a lightning talk, but for our purposes, what matters is that she's been a project manager, contributor to scikit-learn, AstroPy, many core scientific Python packages. She started the review by doing some initial checks and then by finding two reviewers. The first of which was Tessa Reinhardt, who's a very awesome grad student in the Kitsis lab. They also have a poster here you should see tomorrow. And she has this bioacoustic software resource on GitHub. If you want to see some of the 1,000 tools that are out there that give you these annotation formats, sure, she's a perfect person to tell me, is Crozetta going to help her work with those formats in Python? And during her review, she helped me fix up issues with her tutorials. She gave me feedback on how easy it was for another human being to set up a development environment, and pointed out that I needed a linting session. So already that leveled me up. Sylvain Haupert was the other reviewer. He developed scikit-mad. He's one of the developers. This is for working with soundscapes in Python. And he contributed an initial implementation of a class for working with the format from Raven. This is an application out of the Lab of Ornithology in Cornell, and also spotted a bunch of issues with the test and documentation. Then we brought in a technical expert, Yannick Yadoul. He develops Parselmouth. It's a wrapper for Prot, which is a tool for doing phonetics. And he basically helped me parse the Prot format text grids. So thank you, Yannick. And he also contributed in many other ways I don't have time to talk about. Then, because PyOpenSci partners with JOSS, the Journal of Open Source Software, we had an expedited review with them. Olivia Guest was the editor, and in this case, she basically just had to check off some boxes. If you want to read some really clear, incisive writing on computational cognitive science and AI, you should check out her papers. That's an aside. So Crozetta is now officially a PyOpenSci package. PyOpenSci review, I'm going to borrow an analogy from the SciPy maintainers track this year. It's about tending the open source scientific software garden. So there's an idea from philosophy of science that science is actually just people working together, just community. Maybe we've heard some of that here this year. This becomes obvious in scientific software. So if I can paraphrase Brett Cannon, I came to PyOpenSci for the science and the programming language, and I've stayed to help tend the community garden. I hope maybe some of you will as well. Thanks.
Pretty cool to see the Journal of Open Source Software up there. I know we have some folks in this community who are editors. I've actually collaborated with them as an editor, so if anyone is curious about that, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Mario, and I'm just going to let you take it away.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Yeah, because I move a lot. Hello, PyCon. Are you ready for a lot of slides and a live demo in 5 minutes? So, yeah, get excited. So everyone loves f-strings, right? And I'm here to show you what you already know, which is like f-strings. You can put a string, you put some placeholders, and you can get some nice content out of them. But there's a lot more on f-strings than that hopefully you know about. If you go and read the documentation, something I love to do whenever you're using any Python feature, I really encourage you to go and read about it, because I'm sure you are rewriting a lot that's already part of the standard library. You'll find that there is the specification of what you can do with f-strings. And the first part is the f expression, and that basically means that you can put whatever you want as far as it's an expression within an f string. So here you can see that, for example, we don't need to precompute this variable. We can just show it as part of the f string, and that works. You can also find some other cool things, like, for example, this conversion part of the grammar. What this allows you to do is you can pass the !R, and that's going to show you the wrapper of the variable that you put in the f string. You think like, okay, like here for a string, it will just show you the name within quotes, not that useful. But if you print exceptions, this is extremely useful because it's going to show you the exception time. How many times have you seen a log that it includes an exception is just the key of the key error? It's horrible, right? Use the report for it. It's amazing. What else can you do? We can also use the format space, something that, again, I find really useful. How can you use this out? There is another section in the documentation. I will tell you everything that you can do with it. Read about it. And some cool examples is that we saw that before we had a float, and it was showing 375.0. You can just use the format to just say, like, I don't want any decimals. And then you don't need to convert that to an integer before printing it, right? I think all of us have done that. What else can we find in the documentation? You can find that you can align and path your the variable that you're printing. How is this useful? Here, for example, you might think that it's not so useful, but here in Madrid, there are spaces around it. With this like upper arrow and 10, you're saying that you want at least 10 characters to be printed when you're formatting that string. And what's doing is basically padding it with spaces. But what's really cool is that you can choose what you want to use for padding. You can use emojis if you want, and you can get this kind of cool strings, right? But if you want something useful, I'm sure that you have printed sometimes a file or of the output of a subprocess, and you have manually crafted this. You don't need to do that. Like the string format already has this for you. Also, don't forget about the backstrings. You can just put a W, and it's going to print as well the name of the variable. And if you want to go crazy, you can have a custom class that defines that dunder format, and you can pass whatever you want to it. You can have a really cool Boolean that's able to format the Booleans as emojis or whatever you want. And I'm going to show you that as part of the demo. So in case you don't trust me, here is, not this one. So here is the same code that I showed you before, and I run it, and you can see that it's true, and the happy emoji face and the sparklings, right? And the sparklings don't appear. What is going on? Oh no, this is a lightning talk. If I now want to debug this, maybe I add a lot of print statements, or they run PDB, or maybe I have to run GDB and then attach. Like, what could I do to figure out what's going on? Oh, PyStack! Oh, amazing! Yeah, have you heard about this new cool tool? You can just run PyStack remote, pass the PID or something, and you see the Python stack of the program that you are running. But you might say, yeah, but is this really useful? I want to see the variables inside. You can do that. You can just pass that's locals, and it will show you as well the locals that is in the function that is running. So useful, right? And I know, Mario, this is really helpful, but I work doing C extensions. Don't worry, we got you covered. You can also pass that's native, and it's going to show you as well the C native code of the function that you're running. So useful I had this tool at hand, right? And where I was presenting. Yeah, so this talk was totally about F-strings. It was not about PyStack. So please, if you are ever using any Python feature that you find interesting and you find yourself writing code around it, I would really recommend that you go and read the docs, because many times, a lot of the code that you write is already written. And I still have 10 seconds. Look, this is a function you probably didn't know about. The string, the F-string code is going to get rewritten. Check out that. We have PyStack pancakes. 3 seconds. This is my home city. You can go visit it. It's amazing. Thank you.
I feel like I've just watched the whole variety show in 5 minutes. Yeah, that's actually Mario get his talk in because he kind of sneakily put Lorena's name in the talk title. That's why, So next year you can try to be smarter, and maybe you will get selected. So our next talk is by Jessica, talking about malware donation pipelines.
Yeah, let's get dangerous. So hello, my name is Jessica. I'm a senior data engineer at Elastic. I like to call myself the lady of the data lake. I'm also an emoji enthusiast. Here are some of my faves. And I'm also devoted cat mom to Rupert and Xander. Come ask me about them later. We'll have a hallway track about our cats. But also, I want to talk about what I do at Elastic. So I work on the protection services teams. We're a group of cats and dogs who build cloud services and data systems that enable our internal threat research team. So what does that actually mean? So we sit around and we talk about how well is Elastic Security defending against real-world or emerging threats. And this is very difficult because what you have to do is you need to blow up the malware in order to know if we're catching the alerts, if we're detecting on our agent. And if you want to do this manually, it takes a lot of effort. You have to get a VM, make sure it doesn't spread that malware to the rest of your team. You have to make sure it's connected to Elastic, set up some infrastructure, all these other things. So for the past 2 years, we've been building a service called Detonate, started by my coworker Joe Desimone and maintained by myself and mostly Sergey Polzanov, who's been amazing. This runs malware and other malicious or potentially malicious software in a controlled environment. We have the full suite of Elastic Security available. I promise this is not a vendor plug or anything, but we want to make sure we're defending against all threats against our own product. And we use this as security researchers to make sure we can measure the efficacy of our solution in an automated fashion. Oh, sorry, we need to protect the net. That's a hockey joke. So this is a terrifying diagram that we're going to go through in the next few slides. But what I wanted to kind of show is sort of where our Python and friends kind of start. We're going to go into this in a lot more detail, so hold on to your horses. So the first thing that we do is we prepare our task data. And the way that we set up Detonate is to basically start with an API server. We use Fast API with Pydantic for type verification and making sure everything's well structured. And then we dump things in basically from queue to worker to queue, and we go kind of through this cycle. And each worker is very easily extensible. All it requires you to have is a name, the incoming, potentially outbound queue, as well as kind of what the worker is supposed to do. So we can build out more workers if we need. But this first one is basically going to prepare our task data. We want to be able to get this malicious file from a third-party source. We use VirusTotal or Malware Bazaar here. And we post kind of the files, including the malware and some startup scripts for our virtual machines, into a bucket. And then we go on to our next worker, which will start the virtual machine. We make sure we have enough resources, and then we do our infrastructure setup. In this case, we're using GCP for Windows and Linux, or AWS for macOS on top of Anka. We get all the files from GCS. We get our startup scripts set up. We also register this VM with our with the Elastic cluster. And then we wait until it's done. This takes about 2 to 5 minutes, or we do timeout if it fails. Tear down all the infrastructure, post some logs to the bucket, put our alerts in the right cluster, and then we make a human-readable summary. This will grab that job. We'll basically go look at the alerts in the stack. We're going to take a lot of that information and make it a little bit more readable for our threat intelligence researchers. The raw JSON can be quite verbose. It has a lot of maybe unnecessary information, so this allows us to pare it down a little bit. And that's the end of the pipeline, but you may have noticed on top I didn't talk about that little task updates queue. Every time we move between workers, we're able to index and update to another Elastic cluster, so we can gather all this and then look at what workers are running, how long did it take, et cetera, so we can go do some debugging. But also we get to use our awesome CLI tool. So here's Python. We haven't gotten to friends quite yet, but this is using click and rich. So we can use our CLI to put that in there, and then we can see all the steps as they output, which is very awesome. But we also have a website that we have internally called Protections Portal. This is built on the Elastic UI in TypeScript. You can enter in a hash for detonation, and you can see all these awesome results here. If you want to demo that tomorrow, I can show you. But really, this talk is about Python and friends. So while Python is at the core of what we do, we have a lot of various other pieces of technology that support this. Everything from cloud infrastructure to Docker containers and Terraform to using the Elastic Stack itself. But even within Python, we have a lot of very good friends. This is just a very small subset of the kinds of libraries that we're using, all of which we love. We talked about PyTest earlier. Hi. But all of these different things help us make Detonate. So thank you very much. If you want to grab me for a hallway track to learn more about protecting against threats using Python, you can come find me tomorrow. We have a blog series about Detonate. The one, the in-depth Python stuff, should come out this month. Again, big shout out to Sergey, who did all this work. Thank you to the Canadian Internet Registration Authority for these great stock photos, and find me on the internet. Thank you so much.
As a fellow lady of the lake and a very big cat enthusiast, I am very +1 about a cat hallway track, so sign me up. Now for our next talk, we're going to have Eric take us away talking about isolating extension modules.
All right, so my name is Eric Snow. I'm a Python core developer, and I gave a talk yesterday about per interpreter GIL. So today we're going to talk about one of the things I didn't talk about yesterday, which is how this relates to extension modules. So extension modules have to be isolated from each other because they're per interpreter. And so they have to be isolated from each other in the same way. Before I get into that, I want to say pretty much all the stuff I'll talk about right now is made possible by the effort of Peter Victorin, another one of our core developers. And just I want to applaud his effort. I also want to say thanks to the captioners because just like last year, they've been doing a great job. Okay, so who does this relate to? People who create or maintain extension modules. Not everybody, but it's quite a few people. What does it relate to? Your extension modules. When should you worry about this? Now, if you want to. A lot of these APIs have been around since Python 3.5, but it's really going to matter starting in 3.12 and increasingly so. So start thinking about it at least. Where do you want to work on it? You know. So why does this matter? There are lots of reasons, but the main one, like I was saying, it helps. If you want to support multiple interpreters, you need to do this stuff, which is the multi-phase init. And PEP 630 defined exactly what people need to do. It got turned into a how-to document. So you can go look at that. It's really clear. What do you got to do? There are kind of four things really you got to do. That last one is support for a per interpreter GIL. So for the actual supporting multiple interpreters themselves without the per interpreter GIL, you need the first three. The first one, you got to convert static types to heap types. And so it involves these steps, more or less. You got to take your static types and turn them, make a new array of PyType slots and these different things. So that how-to kind of walks through this stuff. I have some slides here. I'm going to skip them. So the next thing, you got to take any global variables you got and move them into what's called module state. It's pretty straightforward. May take a little work, depends on how you're using your global variables, how many you got. Again, that how-to document spells it out pretty well. And then for multi-phase init, once you got those other two things done, you implement multi-phase init. It's actually really straightforward, and there's not much more to it. Depending on how big your extension is, it doesn't really matter. There's just, you take the init function you got and you convert it over into the into your exec function, and you set up module slots, and the how-to document explains it really well. And then the last thing with the external global state. So when you have a library that you're relying on that has external state, you can't do a whole lot about that. You got to figure out how to manage that. Mostly, you got to figure out if you have that sort of dependency, and if you do, you got to figure out how to make sure it's thread safe. Maybe throw some locks around how you access it. You got to make sure that your different instances of your extension are handling that properly. It shouldn't be that common, but it's something to be aware of. If you want to help with this, give us feedback. We've already got lots of feedback, and Peter's been able to turn that into a lot of really useful API. We also have documentation documentation can always use some help, and anything else you can help with, just let us know. So again, it's kind of these three, and then fourth step, and that's it.
Whoop. Sorry, I was organizing something. Thank you so much. And the next, we have something about AeroPython, presented by Felipe. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, so today I'm going to talk about AfroPython and how we are doing Black activism with technology in Brazil. So first I'm going to start with me. I'm called Felipe de Moraes, but you find me on the internet by FelipePython. And some people ask me if that's how my mom called me. That's true. My mom called me FelipePython. I'm a software engineer. I'm also the co-founder of AfroPython. I'm a Jiu-Jitsu blue belt. If you like Jiu-Jitsu, like come talk to me. I also speak 4 languages. I have been 10 countries so far, 4 continents, and I try to be healthy. I'm also a dog father, so I'll show a picture of my dog here. That's Pasoka. A little message here. And she is my second adoption. Actually, I am the second adoption of hers, because at the first adoption, she was mistreated, and she was given back to the place that she was born. And I adopted her, and since then, she is very scared because she was bitten when she was pooping in the wrong place. So if we're going to take a pet, it can be a cat, a dog, please take care of them very well, please. Okay, going back to AfroPython, that's how we started. And actually, we came from a lot of women in IT events, especially Jungle Girls, and we understood that there was no incentive for black people in IT as we have for women in IT. So we decided to start an event that started as a workshop, and this is our first meeting. And it started to grow. We had our first event that was a workshop in south of Brazil. And it started to grow, and more people get interested in AfroPython and Python itself. And as the time passed, we have more conferences and more time. And this was one of the biggest workshop that we have done. And after that, we made a conference. It was 2019, and we realized that there was company willing to sponsor us and gave us support. And we wanted to bring this change for more people as well. So we decided to make a company out of AfroPython that will be especially a boot camp where people are going to come for free, the students, but the company is going to be sponsoring so they can hire the people. And we start to make this change that we want to make to bring more black people to IT and in a scaled way. This is our last event in person. Before that, actually, we had an online conference as well that went pretty well, but we don't have as many photos as we have for the in-person events. And after that, we decided that we want to have a second conference that we held in Salvador, the same city where this happened, and we call this the pre-conf. Actually, part of the slides are in Portuguese. If you want to learn a language, that's your chance. So we're going to have a conference in the middle of this year, 22 of July. If you want to come, if you are interested in, or maybe next year, come talk to me. And I'm going to do something different this year. I will call for an open space for black people in IT, especially at PyCon. We want to take a picture and see how many of us we are and how we can connect to each other. And if you want to come, please come, and we're going to chat. That's what I have to talk. That's AfroPython, and I am Felipe de Moraes. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I love all these open spaces. It's always a really fun range of ones we hear, be it if we're slightly being teased about your lightning talk being selected, or really great empowerment of all the people in our community. So now, next up, we're going to have Ross to take us away on our next lightning talk.
Hello, I'm Ross Bryant, and I just clicked that slide too soon. I lead Phylum's research team. Thank you to the organizers for giving me the opportunity. This is my first PyCon, and I'm learning a lot about lightning talks and open spaces and overloaded acronyms. This invitation grabbed my attention yesterday, and I bounded up the escalators brimming with excitement to talk with fellow security researchers. But the group, yeah, okay, you see where this is going. But the group that was leaving said they needed to make way for the sysadmins. So I leaned over and asked, isn't this for software reverse engineers? Never even heard of that term. This is for site reliability engineering. Well, farewell, and good luck with your nines. I have to go now. So I want to talk to you about code obfuscation, specifically PyPI packages that contain obfuscated code that is itself malware or is malicious code that ends up putting malware on your machine. Nearly daily, our automated platform detects obfuscated packages such as these. And we report these to the PyPI security team, and they're fantastic, by the way. Both of these are easy to deobfuscate, and what you find underneath is that each starts with an import statement and ends with malware dropped on your machine just as soon as you pip installed either of them. But for this talk, they serve as minimal examples of what any obfuscation really intends, and that is, it's hard, it increases the difficulty for someone to reason about the code, including the original author. More about that in a moment. But this is typical of what we find in report. Pretty standard stuff. Lots of things there that we see across many obfuscated packages. This one was particularly nasty in that it dropped a remote access tool on your machine written in Golang. We have a blog post about that one. Next slide. This one was part of a massive typo squatting campaign that dropped a crypto wallet stealer. We have an entire blog post about a postmortem for this attack. It was about 900 packages, typo squatting about 40 of the most popular packages across a wide variety of interests. So if you typed matpultlib, like I've typed so many times in my life, and pip installed that, you got malware. And even though there's identifiers in this file that use non-ASCII, the Unicode abuse that this talk focuses on comes from this sample. So at first glance, we see a number of the usual tricks, dunder import, base64, b64 decode, zlib decompress. But in fact, this ended up being just a Discord token stealer, but a Discord token stealer today is an SSH key stealer tomorrow. And these are in vogue right now. But this caught my eye, and I said, this can't possibly work. Like, we see malware that gets published, and the guys don't even test it, and it doesn't even work. To me, I thought, well, this doesn't work. It can't possibly work. None of those self-identifiers are the same string. Right? This just can't be true. Right? I mean, self does not equal self. And even though maybe if you're at the back you can't see, if you look at the Unicode code points or the names, they're just two different strings altogether. And so I began reading the Python language reference, and in chapter 2, I discovered that this is a design feature. The parser in the Python interpreter normalizes Unicode in some identifiers. And so this means that though two source code files could be different while being visually similar, the Python interpreter sees them as the same. And this is the advantage of this obfuscation. It's still readable. Self still looks like self. But any string matching or regexes looking for the canonical ASCII self, they're going to be blind to this. And so this raised my curiosity, because I'm a mathematician. How many different ways can you do this? How many different variants are there of self? There's 19 S's, or S-like characters that normalize down to lowercase s. Thank you, Ned, for telling me what lowercase means now. And so there's about 122,000 ways you can write self. And that's not a terribly exciting identifier to look for when you're looking for malicious code, but these are, you can see there's a lot of digits in those numbers. They're big. Dunder import, subprocess, crypt, unprotect data. And so what's the takeaway here? The takeaway is that many of the state-of-the-art obfuscation detectors count many things, including function calls, but if they're not normalizing these prior to counting, all the counts are going to be wrong. Moreover, the regex and string matching will be blind to all the Unicode variants. I hear you. So even though this technique is noteworthy, it allows this guy to hide in plain sight. We can reason about the code, and so can he. So it's a strange obfuscation scheme. This is the link to our research blog, where you find all the details that I suppressed here, our Discord channel, and I'm happy to talk about anyone later about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And then we have, next we will have Juliana talking about something that I found very scary personally, is ETL.
Okay, I need the... Oh, there you go. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? No? Okay, can you hear me now? Wait. Can you hear me? Oh, now I got it. What about this? This one is fine too. I don't think I need this. Sorry. Hi. My name is Juliana. I'm a software engineer, and my talk today is called ETL, Extract, Transform, Load, AKA Life of a Data Engineer. That's my mastodon. So what is a data engineer? It's a person who works in a variety of settings to build systems that collect, manage and convert raw data into usable information for many different people in a company, like data scientists, business analysts, and so on. So the goal of a data engineer is to make data accessible so the organizations can use this data to evaluate and optimize the performance or improve business. The most common method used in data engineer is the ETL, which stands for, oh, it's a bad, sorry. Sure. So ETL stands for extract, transform, load. So let's go each of them. Extracts, it's when we extract the relevant data from the source database. Transform the data so it's better suited for analytics, and load the data into a target database. So I'm going to give an example of a recent project where I work. So I work at this company called Remix, which is a software that urban planners use to plan the cities. And we usually bring data to Remix so the urban planners can use this data to make better plans. And one of the data we usually bring is the census data. So what I did this year was bringing the Canadian census data to Remix. So you can see in this diagram, it's pretty simple, but we have the Canadian census website, we have the local database, and the production database, which will be the end goal. So let's go for each of the process separate. Extract. Look at those guys. They are moving data from one place to another. And that's exactly what we do, like using Python scripts. So we extract the data from the original source and load it to a temporary database. In Canadian Census example, we extracted the data from the Canadian Census website to my local machine. Transform, magic. That's where the magic happens. Some ways we can transform data. We can clean data, fit standards so we can use the data, join different kinds of data, deduplicate data, convert data into a consistent format. And in the Canadian Census example, we joined the census data with geographical information because we needed to visualize that in Remix, which is a map-based software. So transformation is usually made using SQL, joining data, creating and populating tables, creating the necessary indices. Load. There are the guys again moving data one place to another. So we just move the data from the temporary database to a permanent place, usually a database that lives in production. In Canadian Census, we move the final table from a local database to Remix production database. After that, we can then create the data sets and layers, which is what our customers will use in the Remix platform. So the final result, let me see if that loads. So, okay, this is the Remix platform. This is the Canada map. So here we have the data layers. Population was one of the layers that we created. And if you go for each block, you can see the population amount for each block. And that's the final result of this project. That was my talk. Thanks for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that talk. And now for our last lightning talk of day 2, afternoon talks, we have Tyler, who's going to go ahead and take it away.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. I wanted to say thank you. This is my first time being at any conference related to any sort of open source software. I have been in the community for years, but this is my first time actually meeting people in person, and you all are so wonderful, so thank you so much. So my name is Tyler Menezes. Here's a photo of me, very embarrassing photo of me from when I was younger. And I work for a nonprofit. You may have seen us over in the community spaces. And we work helping get community college students into open source software contributions. So you may be thinking, community colleges, why community colleges? Did you know that community colleges can give out bachelor's degrees now in most states? Did you know that community colleges cost like $5,000 a year in tuition, which for those of you international, that may sound like a lot. For those of you in the US, that's not very much. So because of this, a lot of the students who go to these schools are lower income, they work for service industry jobs, et cetera, really interesting backgrounds. And recruiters don't come to community colleges, right? That no companies are going to community colleges and trying to get these students into tech jobs. So we found that if we can get students some open source experience, they're about twice as likely to get a job, they're more confident, it's great. So I'm here to talk to you today about how you can help students like this get into open source software. This talk is focused for maintainers. How many people here consider yourself a maintainer? Okay, how many people here have at least one GitHub repo that has like maybe 100 lines of code or more? Okay, everyone here is a maintainer. This is all we need because a lot of these students just need really, really simple, easy things to get started with. So this talk is for everyone here. So what are the things we can do to help make open source software, even small repositories, more accessible to beginner contributions? First one, contributing.md file, right? This is table stakes. Every repository who wants to be friendly to beginners needs a contributing.md file. Resources, what should people look into? What are the coding conventions and the code styles? Is there a code of conduct? Things like that. That should go into the contributing file. Second thing, development environment. This should probably also be in the contributing file, but I want to call this out specifically. There are a lot of very large open source projects that if you follow their instructions, the development environment that you will set up does not actually work and you will spend an hour trying to troubleshoot it. If you're a student who is new to open source software, that sucks. It's going to take you a week. It's awful. So check it regularly. Make sure your development environment instructions in your contributing file are actually working. It should work for Linux and Mac, and also ideally Windows. A lot of lower income students who want to start contributing to this don't have money for a Mac and maybe haven't learned that much about Linux. Even if it just says to install WSL so you can run Linux on Windows, call it out. Third thing, continuous integration with linting and tests. When someone opens a pull request, it's really helpful if they get feedback right away instead of having to wait a month because they're probably going to be pretty demoralized if they waited a month and their pull request gets rejected because they didn't use the right coding conventions. So to help students avoid easy pitfalls. Fourth thing, architecture.md. This is how the pieces of your project fit together and how information flows between the different files and modules. If you want to create one of these for your project and you don't know what to do, search for architecture.md just on Google. There's some really, really great resources out there that will help you put together a really good one for your project. And the fifth one is having good first issue tasks. Speaking of which, okay, so here's my sort of subpoints. A good first issue, what does it mean to be a good first issue for a beginner? Should be self-contained, right? Something that's solved in one file or maybe a couple of files, but it shouldn't be that hard to follow the flow through the thing. You have some initial idea of probably how likely this is. Should be clear. There should be enough data in the issue itself that they don't have to ask you for clarification because beginners are terrified of you. They think you all are so cool. I think you all are so cool too, by the way. But the beginners especially think you're so cool that they don't want to bother you with their stupid questions. So it should be clear. Should be decided. You shouldn't have to have a discussion with the maintainer about what needs to be done. And lastly, it should be recent. It's not obvious to students if issues that are 6+ months are old are still valid, and if they spend like a week or two getting their development environment set up, that kind of sucks if it turns out they couldn't do anything. Okay, so 5 seconds if you want to take a screenshot, if you want to take a picture, there's your cheat sheet. So if you are a maintainer, try to have your project do these things. It's really helpful. Last thing I wanted to call out, we are a nonprofit. I'm not going to pitch you too much, but we are a nonprofit. We're looking for mentors, so if you're interested in mentoring students a couple hours a week, visit that first link. And if you're an open source project that wants to help contribute issues that these students can work on, visit that second link right there, and we'll actually help you write those good first issues even. So thank you all so much. You've been wonderful, and I hope to see you at the next PyCon.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for participating in the Day 2 afternoon lightning talks. We are now going to go run to the PyLadies auction. So if you do have questions for us, find us later, not right now. But again, we are still collecting those slides. Again, we're both visible on Twitter. If you are a Mastodon, we're also there as well, or we are in the staff room. So feel free to find us, and have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.
Bye.